there, and welcome to Unveil Your Brilliance with Angilie Kapoor here on the Win Win Women TV network, where each week we explore helping you to break free from the illusions that are holding you back. My name is Angilie Kapoor. I am a career and conscious leadership coach, a multi book author, and inspirational speaker, as well as your host. I'm also the founder of my leadership coaching company, Oversight Global. At Oversight Global, we are on a mission to address the consciousness crisis in the world, one leader at a time. We're still living the old paradigm of age as an arch. That's the old metaphor. You're born, you peak at midlife, and decline into decrepitude. A more appropriate metaphor for aging is a staircase, the upward ascension of the human spirit, bringing us into wisdom, wholeness, and authenticity. Now, that was a quote by Jane Fonda, the actress. Now, I love this quote as it puts into perspective how perimenopause and menopause are a time of transformation rather than a time of loss, grief, and suffering. Now, as always, I like to share a quote with you that relates to the topic of our episode discussions, and this week is no different. Now, on today's episode, we have a truly inspiring guest joining us to share her expert wisdom, thoughts, and insights on moving through menopause with grace. But before I bring her on, again, just a friendly reminder to keep a lookout for our episode segments, our show pillars, which we make sure we touch on each week. And they are brilliant mindset, breaking free, and brilliant strategies during our discussion. So without further ado, let's go ahead and welcome our special guest for today, Laurie Morse, onto the show. Now, I am so thrilled to have our guest for today here with us. Now, before I bring her on, let me tell you a bit about her. So, today we are joined by Master Health Mentor Laurie Morse, who makes it fun and effortless for spirit centered women in menopause to increase energy and improve health no matter their age. After practicing Chinese medicine for 30 plus years, she's seen proof that the way to truly heal is by harnessing the natural principles of life force and the elements, making it possible to bring our body, mind, and spirit into high level alignment to feel good again and enjoy a life that we love. She's gathered these secrets for decades from her private practice and an online sacred health academy that serves many. She's also a best-selling author of two books, How to Reverse Heart Disease Naturally and The Art of Returning to Love, How to Show Stress the Exit to Heal, and is currently working on her third book, Moving Through Menopause with Grace. So get ready to be hit with some knowledge, be inspired and empowered, ladies, as we welcome Laurie Morse to the show. Laurie, welcome to Unveil Your Brilliance. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. And by the way, the third book on menopause is coming out this week. And
Awesome.
your listeners will get to read it if they so choose.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I think they'll love that. So let's go ahead and jump right in because I mean, I know I've been having challenges with perimenopause for the past few years, and I've talked to several women who are in the same boat. They're either dealing with challenges with perimenopause or menopause. So it's definitely a thing that I think everybody kind of needs help with in terms of really understanding what's going on and how to best, go through this time period in our lives to where, we don't feel like we're losing ourselves and are continuing to be able to be effective and productive and things like that. So,
Yeah, I hear you on that for sure. Yeah. So where should we start? Like just an overview?
yeah, I mean, I think if we can maybe like help women understand what menopause is and why we have the different symptoms that we do, that would be great.
Yeah, such a good question. And I think it's really important to front load this with the fact that there's not one template,
Mhm.
like woman has her own experience and that's okay, it's normal. So menarche is the onset of the menses, which is, when a woman first has her first bleed,
Right.
usually in the early teen years. And menopause is the pause of that menarche. And
Mm.
one is determined to be officially, in menopause when she's not had 12 cycles in a row.
Right.
So a year's worth of no cycle.
Mhm.
And it's so funny because women will say, "Oh man, I got to month 9 and then I got a cycle." And that might happen a time or two. And there's just no way to predict how it's going to be. I thought, I'm 63. I started going through, I now, in hindsight, remember exactly when things started really shifting. I was 42, and I thought before 42, and it just seemed like PMS was getting a little more intense, but you
Right.
don't think anything of it because it's like the slow boiling frog.
Mhm.
It happens so, slowly and gradually. And, that really is the onset of perimenopause. So perimenopause is that sort of premenopausal. I divide it into three. So perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause.
Okay.
Perimenopause it can start happening as early as our 30s, because that's when progesterone, one of the two, estrogen and progesterone, are the two reproductive hormones that are in a woman's body, although they influence every cell in our body, right?
Right. Mhm.
Progesterone just starts this slow natural decline, which leaves a relative excess of estrogen, which is kind of what makes things start feeling more intense. Let's just say,
Yeah.
like, PMS is more intense. But there's the relief when we start our cycle. It's like, oh, okay, I feel like a caged bird that just got set free, and that could be sore tender breasts, or just a little more irritable, or sleep disruption, or digestive disruption in that perimenopausal window. And that can last a long time.
Mhm.
That can go all the way into the early to mid to late 40s. It's one thing, it's a consideration anyway, but it's not like foolproof for a woman to ask her mother, like, how old were you when you had menopause, and how was it for you? But that doesn't mean it's going to be that exact same way for a woman in menopause.
Mm.
When a woman is in the core of menopause, it's hard to not notice.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's when estrogen starts a real crazy ride, right? And
Mhm.
that could last anywhere from, 3 to 8 years. I remember reading a book, The Wisdom of Menopause by Christiane Northrup, back in my early 40s. And things were starting to get really crazy. And I thought me going through menopause was going to be cake, because I thought, well, I treat women who are going through, I see how it rolls, I'm healthy. But that wasn't my experience. But I learned a lot, and now I have, a lot of wisdom to share with other women. The chaos of estrogen going
Mhm.
crazy, and this is the body's way of, you know, taking a woman from a fertile woman to a non-fertile woman. It's no small feat.
Right.
It's a very stressful experience. There's three things that I wish that I would have known. I'm not sure I would have listened, but at least I would have known, that someone would have told me, because I kind of found my way through all of this in the dark without much. I mean, I was working in an office where there was a nonprofit organization that shared this office suite,
Mhm.
and another business, and myself as a Chinese medicine practitioner. And so the women who were volunteering for the nonprofit were older. And I remember, like, clinging to them. I'm not kidding. Like, there was a hallway where we would walk to the bathroom, and I would grab these women's arm and say, "Tell me this gets better." you know, just tell me there's light at the end of the tunnel. And they all said it does. And not only is it better, it's better than before in different ways. So
Mhm.
one of the core things that I discovered is that, because I remembered the feeling of fertility draining out of me. My energy was draining out of me, fertility. I mean, I could feel that experience, and it was
Mhm.
like, oh my God, I'm losing myself. That's what women think. I no longer know who I am.
Right.
And there's this time where a woman is in a chrysalis and it's dark. And there is a metamorphosis going on from, like, to use the analogy of a caterpillar through the chrysalis to a butterfly,
Mhm.
kind of a similar experience. And that dark phase is really hard, especially if we resist it. So the three biggest mistakes that I have discovered, that if a woman would realize and tend to these, her experience would be so much more graceful. And the first one is missing the deeper meaning of menopause. I have now discovered that menopause is a call of the soul. It is a transition to wholeness, even though it does not feel that way at the time. It feels like we're being broken,
Mm-hmm.
but that's not a permanent experience. It just feels that way. And the more we resist it, this is the number one thing I wish I had been told. The more we resist what's happening, the more difficult it is for us, and the more we release the stress response in our body, on top of the stressful experience of the complete change of, fertile to non-fertile woman, which is
Right.
what menopause is.
Mm-hmm.
Not acknowledging that it's a sacred path, because it is. We're mining wisdom, we're rebirthing ourselves, and we get to determine who we choose to be in that rebirth. Right?
Mm,
We're not just being thrown, culturally, it feels like we're being thrown out of the mainstream. We're being thrown out of, like being acknowledged as a youthful, woman with beauty. That's a very important thing to our culture. But I
right.
think that's going to change with the amount of women who are in menopause now.
Mm-hmm.
And also the experience of alchemy. Alchemy is the transmutation of one energy to another. We know the story of lead turning to gold.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it could be anything. Lead could be the way we have been living our life that is no longer serving,
Right.
the way we say no when we mean yes, and yes when we mean no,
Mm-hmm.
the way we take burdens onto our shoulders as women that aren't ours to carry, the way we get enmeshed and entangled and codependent with other people, all of that has to be cleaned up in menopause. And
Mm,
if it isn't, we suffer, right? So alchemy, in the way I now understand it, and Chinese medicine is brilliant, because there's a whole, okay, the medicine can fix shoulders and hips, and all of those things tend to be at play for many women in menopause.
right.
There's this thing East, I think Japan is the main country who said this. Oh, you have the 50-year-old shoulder problem,
Oh.
which is pain or frozen shoulder, and hips tend to be involved.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a change in estrogen levels in our joints. Estrogen is the hormone of moisture. So when estrogen starts being depleted, we might feel itchy skin. We might feel dry skin. We might have a dry vagina. We might, our joints might start acting up because they're not being lubricated in the same way. And this is where, I mean, there's so many things to say on this subject, and you stop me if you want me to stop babbling.
Oh, this is great.
Yeah, nutrition is so vital. Yeah, I mean, it's always vital in all phases of life, but
Mm-hmm.
nutrition it is imperative during this time, because if we don't feed our cells and our joints and our ligaments and our tissues and our tendons and our muscles, then we're going to be more prone to injury, and it's going to take longer for us to heal. And so nutrition is a fuel, obviously, for our energy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, keep in mind that it takes a lot. So we know that when we eat a meal, our energy is now 65% of our energy, 65% of our energy is going to digest that meal. That's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they say to swim after a meal, because you could, but if you can imagine that 65 to 70% of our energy as a woman, when we're going through the most, heightened phase of menopausal change,
Mm-hmm.
it is going to that,
Oh,
which
wow.
means we have the same amount of energy to do what we did when we were 30.
Right.
The balls in the air and nothing got dropped, and that changes during menopause.
Mm-hmm.
Will You will gather a different form of energy, and we're going to talk about this in a minute. It's a different form of fertile energy. It doesn't come from our fertile reserves as a fertile woman to be able to make a baby.
Mm-hmm.
We have to gather it somewhere else, and it is available. It's unlimited, and every woman should do it. And I'll tell you what that means. Um, but then we fill our tank with a different life force, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And then oh, well, this is pretty good. I mean, this is my experience, and it's the experience of women, the hundreds of women that I know, that that pay attention to this path in soulful, sacred ways.
Okay.
If we're kicking and screaming inside of our chrysalis and resisting,
Mhm.
it's going to make the full experience difficult. The other thing is not tending stress. So I've said a couple of times that it's already very stressful and energetically draining to go through this phase of life. We can't get away from it. We can't stop the experience. It's going to happen. So we might as well walk it with as much grace as we have access to. And that's going to require educating ourselves, accepting our own, the way our body is experiencing it, and then gathering ingredients for a recipe that will give us this path of grace.
Right.
So do not tend stress. It is going to, our hot flashes will be worse. Our sleep. I didn't sleep for 4 months, not one single night.
Oh my gosh.
Miserable. I remember crying all the way to work, thinking I just can't keep doing this.
Yeah.
Hot flashes, sleep, cortisol gets really roughed up during our menopausal experience because it's all part of the endocrine system. And then we have belly fat, and we have, we can't sleep at night, and we're revved, and it's afternoon and we're exhausted, and we think, well, certainly I'll sleep tonight. And then we go to bed and we're
And we
wide awake.
can't.
It is just outrageous. I remember thinking, why does it have to be this way? Why in the hell does it have to be this way? But it does actually. It has to be a way, but it doesn't have to be that way. So this is where I'm so passionate about helping women, find their recipe. And then the third thing is ignoring the wisdom of our body and our spirit or our emotions. When emotions get intense, when our body is throwing out symptoms, it's all messages of intelligence, but we have never been taught that. We're taught to actually get scared, start Googling, freak ourselves out, spin in our mind, and not get anywhere good. So if we drop into our body, and this is called being embodied, and we turn to the thing that's getting our attention. And I use a creative process for this, because I remember there was a point where I was doing everything right because I know what to do, right? Meaning I was eating, moving my body, and taking all these supplements, and I do bioidentical hormone replacement. That's a whole nother conversation. It's good for many women. It doesn't mean it has to be for every woman. I would never ever do synthetic hormone replacement. Doing all these things right, and then I realized something I'm missing. I was only getting so far, and I wanted to. I kept getting these catalogs from our University of California, San Diego, UCSD, and it had this art and creativity program. It was a 3-year program, and I was drooling over it. I had tried to paint a teapot in my 20s, and it came out terrible. And I threw it all on my closet shelf, and I just determined I was not a creative person. I now have a completely different knowing of that. So I kept by the 4th catalog, and this is going somewhere for menopause, I promise. I kept thinking, oh, I'll do that when I retire. And then by the 4th catalog, I thought, why would I want to wait till I retire? So I did the program. I was miserable, in the menopause, throes of menopause, but it was something. It gave me something to sort of focus on. The point is that when I did my homework and when I did the creative practices, something shifted, and I realized, oh, creativity and healing are like a marriage. So that is a path that no woman needs experience for, to process emotions, to transform her energy, to do that alchemy thing we talked about. Anytime we do anything creative, if we're doing it with intention, it will transform our energy.
Oh, wow.
And it becomes like a sacred altar, ALTAR, upon which we can alter, ALTER, our energy. And so it's kind of a big deal, that, and I have on my website, there's a whole section of creative processes that if this is, and the thing I want women to understand is that you do not need 1 ounce of experience. This is not about hanging something on the wall of the Smithsonian. It is about what happens energetically when you're intentionally engaged in a creative process. We mentioned life force, and you and I've talked about this before.
Mm-hmm.
Life force is another word for light. And energy can be transformed with light. So when we're talking about the deeper meaning of menopause as a call of the soul, as a transition to wholeness, as a sacred path, and as an alchemy,
Mm-hmm.
this is our job. This is how we rebirth ourselves. And I do not know how to do it without the life force that I consider as light,
Right.
because that's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
So when we mentioned before, like in being embodied and being present and turning to the intelligence that our body is trying to get our attention for,
Mm-hmm.
and if we bring light to that part of our body, and if we bring a breath, and if we bring some acceptance, and this will be hard in the beginning, but if we just keep practicing it, it will get easier and easier until you own it. And then you are like, it doesn't matter what happens because I have this capacity to transform my own energy, and that is what we are supposed to be doing.
Mm.
Don't get taught this, but I guarantee you it is what we are supposed to be doing. And if we don't, then we have to figure out how to live in quicksand. And I don't know anybody who wants to do that. We're
Right.
not free, right?
Right. Exactly. And you won't survive for very long doing that.
Exactly, exactly. We're gasping and grasping, and it's just there's nothing good there. Yeah.
Right, right, right. So one of the things I did want to ask you about is that, there is first of all, I mean, I think we all know that there's a stigma around menopause. And there's
Right.
also this, kind of emotional loss that women go
Yeah.
through, because again, they're losing their fertility, they're entering a new phase of life. So, and, I'm gathering from what you're saying that we really just kind of need to turn into that and accept that
Yeah.
and let ourselves really process that. And I think that if you're in the proper mindset of doing something like that and really seeing it from the perspective of, this is really a rebirth for you in a time of, spiritual transformation, then you dealing with kind of those, darker, more negative emotions of loss and grief, you'll be able
Yeah.
to get through that a lot easier and faster.
Yes, well said. That's really well said, Angilie. And if I think you said you're more in the perimenopause. So it in that phase, there is grief and there is loss,
Right.
and it's okay. And the more we can have um, a sense of internal compassion for ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
and that has to be cultivated because it isn't natural, then well, it is natural, but it isn't common, or it isn't what we reach for first, right?
Right.
We,
Mm-hmm.
we tend to get in that quicksand of our emotions, and we don't have any sort of like training leading up to that,
Yeah,
so
exactly. Yeah.
it's all flailing in the dark, right? And the stigma is, I find interesting because, yes, we're losing this youth and we're losing who we know ourselves to be and our capacity to be fertile, and that's all part of the unfolding of ourselves
Mm-hmm.
into who we will be in the second half of our life. I mean, this isn't just a couple of years, it's the whole second half of our life, right? So I realized at some point, oh, I better get good at this because I have a whole half of life to live, so I don't want to not be good at it, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. Exactly.
Yeah, so it's why we have to give ourselves all the legs up that we have access to, which would be things like good sleep hygiene, healthy nutrition. Like, I do not eat processed food anymore. I do not eat sugar
Right.
because I can't do that and feel good in my body,
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of things that we have to let go of and give up in the second half of life.
Mm-hmm.
And so getting good at that is probably a really good decision to make.
Right, right. No, I love that. And I do want to make sure that we talk about your book a little bit because I definitely feel like it's going to be, vital for myself and for the women watching the show that are going through this time period in their lives. So, I mean, is one of the things that I did want to touch on that we're running out of time, so we can't. But you were talking about how the loss of estrogen does make us lose that moisture, and that's why we have the joint pain and the dryness and things like that. One of the is that also connected to calcium? So, should we be supplementing with calcium after this phase?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's only in part connected to calcium. Calcium is really more about the bone health, and that becomes a big thing for women in the second half of life. Bone health, heart health, brain health, that all becomes a really important factor in all the decisions that we need to make, like hormone replacement, supplementation,
Right.
like calcium. Here's the thing, it requires magnesium for calcium to be absorbed.
Okay.
Magnesium is in our soil. So the more important supplement to take is magnesium.
Okay.
There's over 80 functions in the body that require magnesium. And because we aren't getting it in our food the way we were, say, 50 years ago, it becomes important to supplement with magnesium.
Okay.
Most most women actually eat enough calcium in our food, but we don't have the magnesium, so the calcium is not absorbing. So then the old sort of mainstream consideration is, well, throw the supplement of calcium into a woman,
Mm,
take 1200 milligrams of calcium. But if it can't be absorbed, then it can tend to gather around joints and cause joint pain and arthritis. So my tack on that is to actually start with magnesium,
mhm.
make sure a woman has plenty of magnesium regularly, not hit and miss, but every day, best to take at night. It does help. It's a mineral, so it helps to settle our system at night. And then one can determine based on bone health if a little bit of extra calcium supplementation is worth it. Nature is such a balanced um, natural system, right? Like we have the
Right.
sun and the moon, we have progesterone and estrogen, we have yin and yang, we have magnesium and there's all these perfect check and balances that when they don't get considered, then we have to deal with the side effects of that. So
Right. Right. Yeah, yeah, definitely. I wish we had more time because I have so many other things to ask you, but unfortunately we don't. So, can you share with the ladies how they can connect with you and follow you for, more insights on menopause that I know you have?
yes, so look for the book, and you're going to share the link for any listener who wants to read this book, Moving Through Menopause with Grace, a stress-free guide to finding your new normal, less pain, improved sleep, and emotional balance. And there's a lot of good stuff in there, and it talks about the 3 phases and all the things.
Hmm.
And create2healstudio.com, which I
Okay.
think you're going to have to.
Yes,
Um, there's a lot of stuff on there, so you can just go looking around and take what resonates and leave what doesn't. So yeah.
that's awesome. Thank you so much, Laurie, for being here and for sharing.
More thing, the other link is sacredhealthacademy.com, and that's geared towards this online academy, and it's specific for menopausal women. So
Okay.
that maybe that's if instead of create to heal, whatever. Anyway.
Okay. Sounds good. Yeah, I will go ahead and share all of those links with the ladies. And yeah, thank you so much, Lori. It's always a pleasure just, talking to you and learning from you. So thank you so much. Okay, and that is it for today's episode on breaking free from the menopause stigma, owning your journey with our special guest, Master Health Mentor and author, Laurie Morse. I want to thank Laurie again for joining us today and for sharing her incredible wisdom and insights with us on moving through menopause with grace. We'll definitely have to have her back for a discussion on menopause part 2. In the meantime, ladies, be sure to grab your free e-copy of her new book, Moving Through Menopause with Grace, a stress-free guide to finding your new normal, in less pain, improved sleep, and emotional balance. Now, you can get that at the link that's on your screen now. And I also want to thank you, beautiful soul, for being here with me today as well. As I've mentioned before, I don't believe in coincidences, and you, bright light, were meant to be here to receive whatever it is you were meant to receive from this episode today. So keep it up, keep showing up and making progress towards unveiling your brilliance. Now, if you're here with me live, be sure to join me in the second half of the show for Brilliant Connections, where I get to meet you and get to know you, and you're able to ask me any questions you might have from today's episode topic or the show. If you're catching this on the replay, thanks so much for watching. I hope you'll check out our previous episodes as well on winwinwomen.tv/show/, unveil your brilliance, as well as join me live next week. Now, remember, like actress Jane Fonda said, we're still living the old paradigm of age as an arch. That's the old metaphor. You're born, you peak at midlife, and you decline into decrepitude. A more appropriate metaphor for aging is a staircase, the upward ascension of the human spirit, bringing us into wisdom, wholeness, and authenticity. Now, I know I learned a great deal today about changing my perspective on this time of transition in my life, to not dread it or resist it, but to lean into the transformation, growth, and the wonderful opportunity of rebirth that is before me. And I hope that you can too, beautiful lady. Thanks so much for watching. Take care, and I'll see you next week. My lady's here with me live. I'll see you in just a few seconds.